Coffee time again, exposing the truth. Welcome to Coffee Time Again, exposing the truth. Dale at the microphone, the show that demonstrates how history repeats itself. He digs into the past, shows what happens, and how it is happening now. Follow the path of history to where it goes, then relate it to today to reveal the connections. The culture that forgets its history has no future. A history buff and loves to talk about it, going back as far as ancient Greeks and Egyptians and beyond. So grab your coffee, your chair, and listen to the show. Hope you enjoy.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are and listening to this progress. I am Dale. I am the host of Coffee Time Again, Exposing the Truth. And we are back with Leslie again. She is here to talk more about her as a spiritual warrior and what's going on in her life, not in her life so much, but what's going on around the world and the spiritual waters. And one of the questions I'm going to ask her, which I'm going to ask right now, as soon as she finishes introducing herself, is how do you heal the heart and the soul so they mend together? They meld together, because I think that's an important part of this heart, this whole theory of hers. So I may be wrong, but let's find out. Leslie, welcome to the show.
Well, good morning or good afternoon, Dale. How are you doing? Thanks for having me back again.
I'm doing well, and I'm very pleased to have you back. I may do it again if things keep going the way they're going.
I'm by me. I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation last time.
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. So
Yeah.
how does the heart and the soul heal together?
Well, it's funny. They really are. So the heart, the soul, the brain. Now, let me back up. Some people, some religions don't believe there is a soul, and I'm going to be honest with you, up until probably 2018, when I started writing to myself and my whole story came out, I had lived my life purely the way we're supposed to, but I didn't know what I was doing. You know what I mean? Like I was attuned with my body and who I was, but I don't think I was necessarily self-aware, if that makes sense. So I see now how, for me at least, my belief is that a soul is energy, right?
Yes.
And everything we do in the world, every interaction, every material, non-material thing, it's all founded in energy, right? And so even when you talk about the brain and the heart, and I talk about the way I lived my life, and that I was one with the world, I was in unison, I tapped into that collective energy, and it was because my heart and brain were at the same vibrational energy level, and that energy level was the same as the Earth's, right? And just if people want to know more about that, I found out about it on YouTube, his guy Ted Bartel, and he has a TED Talk called or Eric Bartel. Yeah, it's Ted, I think. His son's Eric. But there's a YouTube video called Music Medicine. Okay. And I'm going to go off tangent just real quick to help you explain how I uncovered this stuff. When I lived my life, I really didn't think that much. I kind of just listened to my intuition, listened to that inner voice, which for different people have different ways of tapping into the intuition. Mine, I don't hear actual words, but it sounds like someone's talking to me, but there's no voice. Okay. It's kind of weird, but it'll say, do this, do this. And so I learned throughout my life, because that never steered me wrong, that I would listen to that voice over making decisions in my head. So I kind of just listened to my inner guidance. And by doing that, my brain wasn't working a million miles an hour. And I don't think our brains are supposed to go as fast as we're working them, right? So when I left work and I was putting together this oneness initiative and I was learning all this information, my brain was going really, really fast. Like it was hurting. I think I probably could have earned 2 PhDs in the past 4 years. And I was just there was so much information in my head. I wasn't like getting it out. It was just all there. So as my brain's going a million miles an hour, I wasn't serving anyone. I wasn't filling my heart with nursing and just being out in the world.
Mhm.
And so the heart and the brain have to be kind of working together. Mine all of a sudden weren't. That my brain was going fast, my heart wasn't getting filled. And they call this coherence. It's actually an evidence-based science. It's called heart-brain coherence. When your heart and brain, the energy in them, which is 40 hertz, right? Which is what that 40 hertz, which is a very low tone, is the energy of the universe, according to this guy, Bartel.
Mhm.
And so when they're all in sync, life flows because you're in the flow state of the world. So when I got out of balance, and the way I found that out is my head just always felt like it was scrambled. And I went to have an MRI of the brain. And as soon as my head hit the MRI machine, I fell dead out in this sleep. Like, I don't know if you've had surgery before, but it was like the white milky stuff they give you before surgery. It was a great sleep of my life. And I came out and I said to the tech, "What is the hertz of an MRI machine?" She goes, "Huh?" I went, "Never mind, I'll find it out." So I started searching on YouTube. That's where I came up with Ted Bartel. But I also came up with an MRI. The sound in an MRI machine is 40 to 50 hertz. So basically, that MRI machine slowed my brain down, the sound,
Yeah.
which allowed it to rest. Now, the importance, and this does go back to the soul because it's energy, right? But the importance with having the heart, brain, and coherence, speaking health-wise, is that when the heart and brain are working together, their sync, their coherence, the body believes it's in homeostasis. And homeostasis means that it's in balance, right? So for me, I went, oh my God, my whole life, I always had these medical conditions that have been symptomatic the past few years, but they lay dormant. So what I realized is that when my heart and brain were in sync, when they were in coherence, it tricked my body into thinking it was homeostasis. And so everything that they said I'd had that I never had symptoms lay dormant.
Mhm.
But then past few years, when my brain's when I felt out of coherence,
Yeah.
everything I'd had my whole life, major depression, complex PTSD, general anxiety disorder, my endocrine system went nuts. I got autoimmune encephalitis. My central nervous system crashed. Like everything just crashed.
That
And
sounds like all.
it was because I fell out of coherence.
Yeah, that sounds like a whole lot of the energy got out of sync.
Yes, your energy gets it
Sort of.
right. Yes. And so I think that's what happens with people in trauma. I don't know if we touched upon this last week, but so here's where it goes to the soul. Our soul is energy, right?
Mhm.
And our soul, I believe this, I don't have evidence, but I believe that our souls just kind of, they come to earth until we get it right. Whatever
Right.
lessons we're to learn, our soul keeps coming back in different bodies until we get it right. And so in the past few years, I uncovered heaven and hell is right here on earth. Heaven is when your actions, your behaviors, your words are aligned with your soul's mission, who your soul is, right? So if we're aligned with who we are and what we're supposed to be doing, then life flows. And I'm not talking you don't need to get riches, but it's fulfilling and joyful. When we are in opposition with our soul's purpose, that's hell. Because that's where a couple years,
Yeah,
right?
I'm going to tell you a story.
Yeah. Does that make sense? And
I mean, it makes incredible sense because what I'm going to tell you is a little bit of my story just in the last 5 years, since 2019, 4 years, 2019. I've always been dirt poor all my whole life, struggling to make bills, struggling to do this, pay bills, struggling to survive, and having to survive, not thrive.
Yeah.
And when I moved into this building, things started to change.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this building is in resonance and is bringing me into resonance now from what you're saying. I mean, it just dawned on me while you were talking. I'm not rich, but I'm
Yeah.
comfortable now financially.
Yeah.
I'm
And
comfortable in my own skin. I'm comfortable in my own skin. I have more self-esteem. I
yeah.
feel better physically
Yeah.
for the most part. I mean,
And
I still get my sickness, but
yeah, you found, and they're different energies. And again, in nursing, they never teach us this, and I wasn't aware of it. But there are different energies in places. Now that I'm aware of it, and over the past couple of years, I've really learned I vibrate really high. I have a lot of high energy, high level energy. And that's why I'm such part of the reason I'm such a hard time with computers. Like if I'm frustrated, forget it. My phones, microwaves, I blow them all out. Right. So, and I think a lot of people who've had trauma or a childhood where they didn't feel safe on a regular basis, we put the armor on, right? We kind of disconnect our brain, our heads from our body because the little kid doesn't understand. Why is that happening to me? I don't understand. So we just shut off the bad feeling in our body. And what happens is that the energy that circulates through all our bodies, and this is different medicines, some call it chakras, some call it meridian points, but we are an energy system. When we shut down our feelings and when we put the armor on, we're throwing off the energy from circulating, right? And so I learned, because it happened to me in the past couple of years too. I think that's why my head was going so much. I wasn't balancing my energy. I totally ignored my body, because once you get in that spiritual thing, it's like my body doesn't exist. I don't care. Look, I don't even have makeup on. I used to be like Desperate Housewives woman, right?
Yeah.
Now I'm like, it is what it is. I'm just a body, right?
Yeah.
But anyhow, what happened was that when that energy isn't circulating, all the energy goes in the friggin' head, which creates anxiety, depression, confusion, like all that stuff. So one of the things that was cool about my soul's purpose when it came here and the way I live my life with heart is that I see now when I was out in the world and I hugged people, I was giving them my excess energy. And it was good energy. I don't think positive and negative. I think it's just stagnant and active, right?
Right.
And when I learned this past couple of years, because in doing my own energy, I was wondering, I wonder if I'm also getting sick because my body can't handle all this energy. Because when I would do Reiki on myself, I was getting chest pain. And I'm going, son of a gun. So a couple good friends I know here in LA, and I'd done some energy work on them. I said, will you play with me a sec so we can check things out? So when I go in and my head was feeling like that scrambled and just really foggy, I said, can I hug you? Like really hug you? They're like, yeah, okay. And you can say that. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Don't worry, I'm not giving you any bad energy. But as I would be hugging them, or as I would give someone else energy, my brain would clear. And so I see that by hugging people, by touching people, like there is energy in our touch. When I talk about this oneness initiative and how like the world was my home and strangers my family, and truly I see now it was that feeling one with the world and my interactions that allowed me to thrive in the world. It gave me the courage. It didn't allow, I mean, there's so many aspects of it, but if you're just talking about the soul and energy, all we have to do, seriously, is walk people on the streets, maintain eye contact, and touch one another on the hand. And I swear to God, because I do it now during the day, wherever I'm at, if I see someone who's really hurting, because I can't tell what's wrong, but I can feel a soul that's struggling, right?
Yeah, I can see it too.
Yeah, I go right up to them on the streets and I say, trust me. I take my hand, I put it on their heart. I take their hand, I put it on mine. And I'm like, look in my eyes. And after, I don't think even a minute goes by where you see their lips quivering and they start, Because not only is it that feeling, when I ask people what they're feeling, they're like, I feel loved, like really just loved. And that's the power, the pureness of the heart when we're not wearing the armor. But if we can't see ourselves, none of this stuff can happen.
Right.
And
You
in order,
know,
yeah, and so I think that's where it's the heart, the brain, the soul, and the energy around us. So when
Yeah.
people say like, well, it's not my problem about other people, oh yes, it is.
oh
Yes,
yeah, because planet Earth is alive.
yeah,
It's a living entity,
yeah,
and we're all connected to it just by standing. We're connected to that energy.
hmm
And it's an immense amount of energy because we're a big planet.
hmm
And that's what the reason we're connected to everyone else is because they're all touching the ground. You know, they've done studies with newborns on
yeah,
Thrive and Survive with hugs. The nurses that would pick up the babies on 7, 8 times a day and just hug them. That's all.
yeah,
They didn't need to feed them, didn't need to train them, just hug them. Babies did better
yeah,
because
yeah.
of that tactile touch that you're talking
Well,
about.
and my daughter, same thing. We adopted her from Russia when she was 7.5 months old, and she was 12 pounds, and she didn't sit, and she looked like a month-old baby. And you know, I'd seen failure to thrive in older children in my work, and I learned
Yeah.
about it, but I never experienced. In 1 month, she went to normal weight, started, sitting, started crawling, and just because the first night we brought her home from the orphanage when we were in Russia, and we laid her on this like sofa between myself and my ex-husband, she started squealing like a dolphin, right? You know how they do that high, and it was so sweet. And I looked at my husband, I'm like, I bet you it's the first time she's ever laid next to a human being.
Mhm.
Like that, attachment disorder, a lot of the psychological jargon, and that's what's been so hard about sharing this message, is it is so simple, it's hard to understand, and it's
Yeah.
hard to explain because it's
You-
so friggin' simple. We don't have to help one another. We have to just hold a space and physically touch, not only from a science basis, that the energy, right, the
Mhm.
physical energy, but just by touching someone, you let them know you're not alone.
Yeah. And they give you back. It's not a
Yes.
one-way street. This is a
No,
two-way
no.
street.
It's a two-way street. And also
Yes.
what I learned about doing hugging and all that, and this isn't more physical, but you know, when academic organizations asked me to teach nurses, so I did, and they're like, what do you do? Because I took care of welfare moms, and they're like, they have a much better outcome, life outcome than other nurses. What do you do? And I'm like, everything opposite you told me. But I really wasn't trying to do anything. I did not help them. I'll hold to this day. I do not help. I think helping, we've gotten messed up in that helping is how the ego looks for praise. And most people who help are doing it because they truly do want to help, but their own issue gets in the way because as a children, sometimes we learn to attach our self-worth to helping. And when
Mhm.
your self-worth is attached to helping, that's how we end up with our health and mental health care system.
Mm.
Because
Well,
you've got to have an open heart. It's got to be totally open. For me to sit and be genuinely empathetic and compassionate with you, I have got to be willing to look at every part of me, because you and I may not have the same experiences, but they will elicit the same responses and emotions, right? So when people
right.
say, how can I walk in their shoes? And I'm like, I never go like, well, I do say like, well, what if that was me? What would I need? But if someone, like, I haven't had an addiction. Well, I did just shopping, but not to, that was
Chemicals.
just to let,
Chemicals.
actually, yeah, that worked by getting divorced. I didn't have to shop
Yeah.
anymore. But I just need to know, what are you feeling? Because there are only a handful of emotions. I can identify with any feeling you've had.
Mhm.
It's the feeling. It's not necessarily the experience, it's the feeling. So when I just am able to hold a space for someone to be themselves, right? Not only do they feel seen for the first time? But they start seeing themselves. And here's where it benefits both parties. Every single person in my life that I've held a space for, they may have seen their light, but they allowed me to see mine.
Yeah,
Does that make sense? Like when I was
it does to
doing
me.
all this research for 5 years in a room by myself, there was no one showing me my gifts. I'm like, what's my gift? What do I, and then you start getting in your head. But that's, I think, what we're here for, is to just hold a space for one another, utilize the exchange of energy, let each other know we're not alone, and allow but we're, as a culture, and I think it goes back to attaching worth to being of value, helping. But we're, I totally forgot what I was going to say.
That's
Sorry.
I do. You all have no idea how often I do that in the middle of the word. I forget
Yeah.
what word I'm going to say in the middle of it.
But you look at health and mental health, and I don't know if we talked to, before I go on with that, did I answer the question for you about the
Yes.
soul?
How soul, it's a resonance between the two is what I'm hearing.
Yes, it's a resonance.
They're in sync. They're in
Yeah,
sync.
and if people like, there's a company, I'm a HeartMath practitioner, but HeartMath is a company that has a lot of evidence-based information, and we can do here's why I can't stand by our culture. HeartMath was a company like anyone else, started out with great information, but they've taken something I can teach somebody else in 45 seconds, and they've made like 10 courses out of it to make money. I'm like, oh my God, how do you stretch? If you want, we can do a little practice of how I was guided when I was a couple of years old after that first near-death experience to circulate my energy, if you like.
Sure, let's give it a try. I want to see what that'll help my listeners.
Yeah, so there was a triad of things I started doing since before preschool. I remember doing. I'd put my hand over my heart, okay? And when I breathe in, I would imagine that I was bringing air up from the ground, okay? So I'd breathe in from the bottom of my feet, and I'd picture it going all the way up my leg, all the way up my thigh, all the way up to my head. Now, while I'm doing this, I'm kind of tightening my abs, okay? And then I'd imagine it up in my head, and then I'd bring it back down again to the ground. Again, still tightening the abs. So I didn't breathe out. I didn't do any of that. Like when I went to get trained for breathing for meditation, I couldn't breathe like everyone did. I had to put sandbags on my belly because I didn't breathe the way everyone else did. I call this rubber band breathing. So again, you're sitting there, imagine you're pulling air from the ground beneath your feet, and breathe and picture it. Now there's nothing to picture. Okay. You're just using your imagination. Just pretend you can feel it moving all the way up, tighten the abs, up to the head. And as I'm doing this and holding my hand on my heart, I go, I am safe. The world's a loving, accepting place. I am safe. The world's a loving, accepting place. So I call it rubber band breathing.
That's a lot more.
It circulates. There is no one right way and wrong way.
Yeah, because I used to, in my groups, I do a guided meditation, relaxation with guided imagery.
Yeah.
This is more gentle.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, I never knew why I was doing these things.
Yeah.
But I knew, in a second, I'll show you another thing, but the science I found the past couple of years, when I said my brain was going a million miles an hour, I started researching because I found out about my own traumatic brain injury and how many learning challenges I had and how they put my executive function at a first grade level. And I don't read, and I'm going, oh my God, how did I finish top of my class in nursing? And I have 2 colleagues. How the hell did I get through life? And then I started to see that a lot of the comments that my welfare moms would say to me, like, I don't understand why I can't do what other people do, but I can't seem do it. And I knew these women, so I knew it wasn't sabotage. They were really trying. I saw how neurodiversity, a brain that isn't quote unquote like the typical brain, a
Mhm.
brain that's more creative, is the most creative gift in the world. There's actually a precursor of spiritual enlightenment, the way it's formed, but it is so counterintuitive to the way our society works that I think so many people who are struggling in this world are struggling not because there's anything wrong with them. It's just because they have a neurotypical brain. I mean, a neurodiverse brain. And our systems right now, their way of dealing with that is to teach a neurodiverse brain to be more neurotypical. You want to talk about misalignment, right? I've
Yeah.
tried to make my brain do what it's not supposed to do. It sucks. I'm miserable. That's not me, right? Like, whatever. I'm getting a little off course there, but that breathing, the science behind it is that when you hold your abs, or when you tighten them, I didn't hold my breath and suck in, I just kind of tighten them. It increases cerebral spinal fluid up through the spine and to the base of the brain. And it goes up to the pineal or pineal gland, the third eye.
Mhm. Yeah.
And the third eye has these crystals in it, and it releases energy the same way areas in Sedona and all those places do.
Yeah.
You're increasing that cerebral spinal fluid up. It crushes the crystals, releases energy. It does a few other things, but the bottom line is it eventually opens the gateway to a part of the brain called the reticulating activating system, which allows us to shift perception.
Yes.
When I found that out, I went, oh my God, no wonder I see everything as a gift.
It is.
It is, but it was the way that I was breathing set up the pathophysiology in my brain to allow me to shift perception, right? So, and at the same time, it circulated my energy. You're constantly, I called it rubber band breathing.
Mhm.
But those three things, that breathing, I am safe, and hand on heart, there are more, but those are the very three foundations that allowed me, like when I would tell my mom and aunt and family members about sexual abuse when I was kindergarten, and when I told teachers in first grade, second grade, and nobody did anything, I would do that practice and go, I am safe. The world's a loving, accepting place. I know this means nothing about me. I wonder why they're hurting so much that they can't help a child. So from a very early age, this practice, because think about it, when you put your hand to your heart, what are you doing? You're connecting with self.
Yes.
You're doing what I do to people on the street, hand to the
Mhm.
heart. We can do it to ourselves. You're connecting with yourself. So you
Right.
feel the beat and you're exchanging energy.
Yeah.
One of the practices that I did also, this is more of a teenager, but whenever I saw people on the street, not only did I ask myself, how am I like them? What do we have in common? But I would practice sending them love, the energy of
Mhm.
love. At first I would put my hand on my heart and try to push it to my hand and then push it out. But now I just send love, and you watch people, you can see sometimes they stand when they, so this energy that we don't pay enough attention to. I mean, did you ever hear about, I forget what the name of the book is, but there were studies they did with water and
Mhm.
ants, people talking to them, and energy. There's actually a scientific study done with light beams, and the light beams penetrated these solid surfaces much more effectively when they were being observed by another human being than when no one was in the room. This stuff is like, but here's the crazy thing. Sorry, I'm trying not to get too complicated, but the 40 hertz, right?
Mhm.
40 hertz is what was in the Egyptian tombs, in the Mayan tombs. It's 40 hertz. And so I see now we're telling everyone, oh, the higher the hertz, the better. I'm like, no, we're killing our brains. That we need to slow our thinking down And the energy of the computer, not only that, with the massive information that our brains have to process just by looking,
Yeah.
it's not good for us. It really
No.
is.
Early in my recovery, I was doing some therapy, and I absolutely needed it. And my brain would travel at 1,000,000 miles an hour for days on end, and it just confused me, bring my energy levels down, my self-esteem down. I couldn't function.
Yeah.
I'd have to call in sick to work because I could not function. Let's just call it and say I have a migraine. I did not have a migraine. Just that my brain was traveling so fast I couldn't keep up with it.
But you could have had a migraine because migraines, right?
Mhm.
Migraines, they're different causes, but what happens in the brain is the electrical circuits get all messed up. And
Mhm.
they're either firing too much. And I mean, it's more complicated than that. But the essence goes back to the electrical energy of the heart, which is why if you feel a migraine coming on, you want to decrease blood flow. That's why caffeine, anything that constricts, right? But when you have a migraine, that 40 hertz is really that 40 hertz. This guy who did the music medicine, I mean, he's done studies, and with Alzheimer patients, 40 hertz has brought them back to a diagnosis, like people that were 5 and 6 years out of diagnosis. It brought them back to the day they were diagnosed, that level. It reduced fibromyalgia symptoms by 50%. I think he's currently doing studies on depression. And this is simply by listening to pure 40 hertz, like nothing with birds or stuff in the background, just 40 3 times a week. Now, his studies, he had people sitting in chairs that were vibrating at 40 hertz.
Yeah.
But when I found this, there was a guy I used to date who had MS, and he had MS for like 40 years, and you would never know. And he was in a rock band, so like his diet stunk. He didn't take any meds for it. And I was always curious why. And he said he would visualize every night, like the myelin sheets. So in his mind, it was just visualization. When I found out about 40 hertz, I called him and I went, listen, when you're in the studios every day for all these years, how often do you listen to 40 hertz? He goes, it's always in the background. And I went, oh my God, it's 40 hertz. Like some people can have that glazed look, but it is so simple. It is so simple. And we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot. And my advice for the 40 hertz thing would be start listening to 40 hertz pure and get kids to do it. But seriously, we have got to minimize our time on the computer, not just social media, just the energy itself of the computer is
Right.
I got a grounding bracelet, right? Because there's something called earthing where it's really just going barefoot. But some guy, he wasn't a researcher, I think he was an engineer, years ago, found his family member who had lymphedema. So she had really bad swelling all the time in her legs. He took her out walking barefoot, and the next morning the swelling's gone. And so he started doing that. And so he did research with his friends, unofficial, took it to UCLA, and they're all laughing at him, all these doctors saying, yeah, barefoot. But it ends up now, they finally believed him, and it's called earthing. And it's walking bare feet because we are connected to the energy in the ground also. And the shoes we wear, particularly rubber sneakers, prevent us from absorbing the energy.
I hate shoes.
Yeah,
I hate shoes and socks.
I walk around LA now. The first day I tried it, I was so excited. I think I walked for 5 hours in LA without shoes. And I got to tell you, I felt amazing. And my productivity actually did increase for the couple of weeks after that. So I bought a grounding bracelet. Now, this is smart. You're supposed to wear it like if you're on the computer stuff to kind of block the energy. When I put the grounding bracelet on and I use the computer, I get electric shocks.
Oh, wow.
Bracelet. Yeah. Now I'm not exactly sure all I know is, oh yeah, my energy is so high. So like you, and like you, when I'm really on point. Or yesterday I was at the gym and I was just talking, but great deep conversation for like 5 hours. I felt my energy. It was all here. I actually went in the pool. I'm like, I need ice water. So when your brain's going too fast, don't do heat, because heat's going to open the vessels, bring
Right.
blood to the area. You want cold. When my brain was feeling scrambled, when I was learning too much the last couple of years, I would keep wet towels in the fridge and wrap
Yeah.
them around. Yeah.
Yeah, I drink a lot of water, but it's cold water all
Yeah.
the time. I drink it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I have some sitting behind me now, along with my Pepsi, but I've got cold water, and it seems to help.
Yeah, it does. We're all dehydrated. I
Yeah.
mean, like, even me, it's hard to drink as much water. Not enough time in the day to do everything else, right? But
Yeah, I have a question. I ended up in the emergency room last night
yeah,
because for the last 3 nights, I'd go to bed at 8 o'clock in the evening.
wow,
I'd
good for
get
you.
up. I'd get up between 5:30 and 6. By noon, I was so tired, I was back in bed for 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah,
Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And last night, I just could not maintain it any longer. I just couldn't do it. I was
so,
totally out of it.
you know, we all have different circadian rhythms.
Mhm.
And that's what I know for myself all my life, when I didn't overthink things and I kind of
Yeah.
knew, just don't think, just feel my way through life, my way through decisions, what feels right, what doesn't. I mean, life was so much more simpler and satisfying, but
Yeah.
I knew what worked for me,
Mhm.
right? But even as grounded as I was in who I was and listening to myself, and people could tell me things, and if it didn't feel right, I wouldn't listen. But when it came to business, I did eventually, after a couple of years, go, well, maybe I am self-sabotaging. So I tried all these different things, modalities that they're telling us now.
Yeah.
Like, none of this stuff. The only thing that's ever worked for me is acupuncture.
Mm.
Why? That's dealing with energy, right? Like
Right.
energy is all. But one of the things that I learned from that is I tried doing the sleeping thing they do. Well, my
Yeah.
whole life, I go to bed at like 2 a.m. and I wake up at like 6:30. When I
Yeah.
sleep too much, I feel really groggy, So I guess my point when you were saying that is you got to find out what works for us.
Yeah.
But then again, it goes back to the armor. If we can't see ourselves, we can't really figure out what
Right.
works.
Well, what happened once I got to the hospital and I got into the nurses were floating around and doing their things, and the doctors and the techs and EKGs, but I was getting tactile, and now I realize that's the reason my blood pressure went back up from, it was like 80 over 60. It went back up to normal for me. I wasn't as tired.
Yeah, it is. It's knowing, for the past like 4 or 5 years. And again, the past 4 or 5 years are the hardest of my life. And I knew exactly what I needed, but I couldn't get it. I needed my heart. I needed to serve, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes things are bigger than us. And so it just wasn't happening. And I see how all of our lives are about experiencing different things and
Right.
sharing what we learned with other people. That's how we learn about ourselves and about other people. And I knew that everything I was experiencing, as painful as it was, taught me
Yes.
so much about why people struggle, where we get stuck. The energy, when I was really sick, I would try to reach out to people because in that point when your energy is imbalanced and you're not feeling that you can do what you want to do, it's scary. So then you get
Mhm.
stuck in that fear state,
Right.
right? And then when you're in fear, you try even harder. And the harder you try when your energy is not circulating properly, the more you're not having people respond the way you need them to respond.
Right. You're
That makes
pushing them
sense?
away. Yeah, you're pushing them
Yeah.
away.
And so and it's not even, you could be nice as pie, but we can sense each other's energies. And
Yes, we
so,
can.
yeah. And, and so you're scared, you try harder, you reach out, people turn you down, then you get more scared. Then, especially since my whole life I could connect with anyone. And then all of a sudden I was like, I felt like the plague, it was,
Yeah.
and then you get more inflammation because you're scared and the stress.
Mhm.
And it is this cycle that is so hard to break out of, because you usually need somebody outside you to present an opportunity to fill your heart.
Okay.
Because
That-
I was connected in the past 5 years to myself than I ever been. I mean, I was so deeply. I went from feeling safe in the world, and when COVID hit, to be honest with you, I wasn't sure I felt safe just with me.
Mhm.
And so I decided to see if I could. Well, when COVID came through, all of a sudden I felt safe with me, but I didn't feel safe in the world anymore, right? Because I was sick and I wasn't trusting my intuition, because when you have a lot of these autoimmune things that affect the endocrine system, sorry, can you hear that? There's a dog barking.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. When my endocrine system went really wacky, I mean, it went really bad, and I got the encephalitis, I would be laying in hotel rooms for the first time in my life, would go, oh my God, what am I doing? I'm wasting all this money. I could be on vacation. I'm like, I've never had thoughts like that before. But what I learned from that is when our endocrine system, our thyroid gland is off, for me at least, it definitely got in the way of me tapping into my intuition.
Yeah, it would.
Yeah.
It puts a
Same way
block.
when I have a great mindset, but when I get bad migraines, forget
Mm.
it.
Yeah.
I can't shift it. The pain, extreme pain, really is a challenge.
It is. I
Yeah.
remember my mother having them, and then she was set for 2 or 3 days, just sat in a rocking chair in front of a wall, watching the wall.
Yeah.
And then she'd would keep her eyes covered, which seemed to help her.
Yeah. Well, that's it. So imagine, like, I was getting them like 3 times a week. Well, I would get one, but it would last for 3 days. And
Mhm.
talk about fighting your mindset. Oh my God, because you're in a dark room by yourself. And then
Yeah,
and the energy in your head's like just way out of whack.
yeah,
I think a lot of our anxiety and depression is not mental health. I think it's just cognitive brain health. I really do. I think it's brain health that turns into mental health, possibly because the way the world deals with someone with a brain that, quote unquote, is not typical. You know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, some people who have your gifts, other people become afraid of them because they don't understand.
Yeah.
And one of my goals is to get people to understand what you're talking about, so they're not afraid and they can get the help.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so hard though, because it's so simple. I mean, really, when I work with people, it doesn't take long.
Mhm.
I mean, I tell people, if you really want to learn, because let's face it, unfortunately, we all have to do the actual work, right? Like,
Yeah,
so I can teach people what questions to ask, how to get in touch with your younger self. And then what I do is I'm there like your support if you need to, because even though it's work we have to do by ourselves, what I learned is that you can't feel alone in the world and do this successfully. And the universe was showing me. I mean, I don't know if you've ever had days like this where like you're just in mood, you just need to hear a human voice.
yeah. Oh,
And
yeah,
every time you call, no one calls back.
yeah,
And I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I got to learn to do this myself. And then
Yeah.
the next day, everyone calls back. I'm like, okay, I don't need it now.
yeah. So they call, I had one today. I actually decided
Yeah.
to go downstairs just to be around some of the people that were downstairs to get out of the isolation I was feeling in my room.
Yeah, it is. And I, I don't, since I lived my life so differently, and I've lived outside, way outside the box, because I had to. I couldn't figure out how to work the rest of the way the world did. I don't know if everyone else feels like this, but I mean, when I'm working on the computer, that's what happens eventually. I go like, this is not me. I need to be out in the world hugging and loving. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, but I need to do this first because I need to get it out of my head so I can just go be.
Yeah. I've
And
got a project.
yeah, I guess the message of all this for myself, and I don't know about neurotypical people, but for anyone who has any type of difference, really creative, ADD, autism, any of those things, we have to let our brains work the way they work. Because when we let them free and we're aware enough, right, to see how they work, the neurodiverse brain is like amazingly talented and gifted. It really is. But I mean, I think it was you. Tell me if we said this last week, but I've gone on webinars for ADD because I always like to hear
Yeah.
what people are teaching. And these psychiatrists are like, well, here's a problem with neurodiversity. The brain wants to do what it wants to do. It gets involved with what it likes. It doesn't want to do what makes it frustrated. I'm like, that's the goal of life. You're saying that's wrong? Because like what, like, you know what I'm saying? We're not supposed to do what frustrates us. I'm not
No.
saying, yeah, you know, things can be difficult and struggle, but frustration is different. If you're living aligned with who you are, you should not feel frustration.
Well, I have a project I'm working on. It's a magazine article I'm writing,
Yeah.
and I've given it up for 4 days because I was getting very frustrated with trying to get the words out of my brain onto the computer. And I just
Yeah.
walked away. I haven't touched it in 4 days now.
That's the best thing to do. But
Yeah.
you know, because I knew that myself. I knew my whole life showed me that, like, I don't want to say, I'm sure there was some work involved, but it must have gone easy because I don't really remember the work involved. But even things like nursing school, I would just daydream, like even manifesting. And I hear all these spiritual people and teaching people how to manifest. Manifesting is daydreaming. That's it. Don't worry about the words. Don't worry about like doing it every day. Just close your eyes. And like I can do it now. Like I see this place I want to be in. I'm opening the door and the flowers are gorgeous and it smells really good. Like that's how you manifest. You just imagine and you feel in that moment what it would feel like. And so when you get frustrated, you go back to that. Where's your happy place? Where brings that smile to your face when you're sitting there with your eyes closed and smile, you know?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Well, I hate to say this, but
We're done already. I know.
I mean, I'm just shocked at how fast it went by.
It did go by.
It did go by, and it'll be a while before I can get back to you because I've got
That's
2
okay.
more to do next week.
As I said, I'm still hiding for another couple of weeks until I get this heart model totally out. Because the way my brain works, it can't hold a few things. It's got to like finish the one before it moves on. So
yeah,
okay. And you know, I think, do you still have that Calendly link or
no, it doesn't work for me. I don't know what I'm doing wrong.
You know what? It could look, if it's stuck 9 out of 10 times, it's my bad. I don't know what it is, but
no, in this case, it's not. I know it's me. I know it's me. I just haven't taken the time to really get into it and learn it like I should.
Well, listen, I can teach you that one day if you want by Zoom.
Okay.
I know how to do the things. It's just for me, it's an eye-hand coordination thing that I screw up. But and I'll give this to you to put in the chat. But if anyone just has questions, or feel free to text me. And my number is 610.
I have your number.
Yeah, 50. Yeah. You can put it in the chat and just text me when you text, because I got a lot of sales stuff. Just text that from this show, and I'll call you right back and chat. Because we're in this together. Like we're heading really dark times, and together we can move from the dark of doing into the light of being. But
that's the whole. Don't be a human being, be a human doing.
Yeah.
That's the key.
Yeah.
So I got to shut this off or they're going to cut me off.
Thank you.
But we're not going anywhere just yet. I'm just going to stop the recording.
Thank you for listening to the show. There are show notes and a place to comment at https://coffee-time-again.libsyn.com www.dale.com/website. He hopes that you liked what you heard and will tell others about him. Dale is attempting to get a following that both disagrees and agrees with him. He does not want yes men. If you disagree, wonderful. He is happy to have you here as a part of the Coffee Time Again team. Dale does not talk about the news of the day. He is attempting to give a history lesson that is just as important about what is going on in the headlines of today. Please do not hesitate to contact him. Just remember that Dale wants a clean show, meaning no cussing, name calling, yelling, or hate allowed. You can disagree with him and not be disagreeable about it. Support him and help keep this alive. https://glow.fm/coffee-time-again.